The sky is not as empty as we were taught in primary school, and tonight it feels as though something vast has begun to stir quietly within the darkness above us. The space beyond our atmosphere no longer appears still, but instead seems to be shifting in subtle ways that our instruments were never designed to notice. This movement does not resemble the slow drifting of a rock shaped by gravity, or the gentle push of solar wind across a silent vacuum. It feels more like the controlled flex of a muscle waking after a sleep so long that even the stars have forgotten when it began. For years, 3I Atlas was believed to be nothing more than a silent relic, wandering aimlessly through the interstellar void. It was classified as a forgotten traveler, passing through the cosmic ocean without purpose, intention, or awareness of the worlds it left behind. But tonight, the telemetry tells a story that no longer fits within the comfortable boundaries of scientific expectation. The object's path is no longer a simple curve written only by gravity and distance. Instead, its movement now resembles a deliberate choice, as though intention has quietly replaced momentum. We are watching something that should not have a pulse begin to breathe with a rhythm that feels disturbingly familiar. On October 14th, 2025, the Pan-STARRS survey in Hawaii detected an unusual shift in the object's brightness as it crossed the silent backdrop of deep space. This change was steady and deliberate, not the random flicker of distant starlight reflected by an unremarkable piece of drifting debris. The data suggested that something about the object itself had begun to change from within. By October 19th, the European Space Agency confirmed that the object's acceleration no longer followed any known natural pattern. The motion could not be explained by melting ice, escaping gas, or the familiar behavior of comets near a distant star. There was no evidence of outgassing from its surface as it continued its silent approach. There was no visible trail of dust stretching behind it through the darkness. Instead, the movement appeared controlled, precise, and guided by something we could not yet identify. Dr. Aris Thorne of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory noticed an even more unsettling pattern hidden within the rotating data. The object's spin had synchronized perfectly with Earth's sidereal day, matching our planet's rhythm in eerie precision. Every 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4 seconds, the massive structure completed a full rotation in silence. It was no longer simply passing through our region of space like a forgotten traveler. It was aligning itself with us in a way that felt far from accidental. The timing of this shift felt deeply unsettling, as though the universe itself had chosen this moment to speak. The first anomaly we could no longer ignore was the impossible warmth hidden within its silent structure. At its distance, 3I Atlas should be a frozen husk, near absolute zero. Yet, infrared sensors show a consistent internal temperature of 21 degrees Celsius, room temperature, in the vacuum of the abyss. The second anomaly is the hollow echo. When the Deep Space Network bounced a radar pulse off its surface, the return was not a solid thud. It was a resonance. It rang like a bell for 17 minutes, a structure that large should not vibrate. It should absorb, unless, of course, the interior is not rock, but a cavity designed to hold something or someone. What if we have been looking at 3I Atlas through the wrong end of the telescope? We call it an interstellar object because that is a category we understand. But if a bird flies into a house, it is not outdoor furniture, it is a guest. What if 3I Atlas is not a visitor at all? What if it is a return, an automated system coming back to check on a garden it planted eons ago, only to find the weeds have built skyscrapers? The Sumerians spoke of Anki, the vertical connection. In the Enuma Elish, there is a mention of a bright stone that watches without eyes, a herald that appears when the great cycle resets. We find these patterns in the caves of Lascaux and the high plateaus of Peru, drawings of a second moon that appears only during the transition of eras. History is not a line, it is a spiral, and we have just reached the point where the spiral overlaps. We spend our lives worried about the mortgage, the weather, and the trivialities of the day. We feel so central to the universe. But tonight, as 3i Atlas adjusts its pitch by a fraction of a degree, we are reminded that we are a very young species sitting in a very dark room. The light has just been turned on from the outside. If you enjoy these deep explorations in space, consider subscribing or hitting the like button. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to make content like this. The most unsettling part is not that 3i Atlas is moving, it is that it stopped transmitting right after it heard us. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let us go further. Picture this. You are an astronomer at the Mauna Kea Observatory. It is 3 in the morning. You are drinking lukewarm coffee, looking at a dot on a screen that should be drifting away at 40 kilometers per second. Instead, the dot slows down. It performs a maneuver that would crush any biological pilot. It is not natural physics, it is activation. You blink, thinking the cold air or the altitude is playing tricks on your vision. You check the calibration, you run the diagnostic on the sub-millimeter array, but the numbers do not lie. The object we have named 3i Atlas has just shed its disguise as a tumbling piece of interstellar debris. It is now a vessel with intent. On October 29, 2025, Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb noted that the light curve of 3i Atlas showed a reflective property consistent with polished molybdenum. He is careful to frame it as a possibility, a statistical outlier, but we know that nature does not polish its rocks to a mirror finish. This is the third time this month the object has adjusted its solar sail, or whatever we are choosing to call it this week. It is positioning itself to stay in our shadow. It is hiding from the sun so that we cannot see its silhouette. There are 3 prevailing theories whispered in the halls of the European Southern Observatory. The first is that 3i Atlas is a derelict probe, a piece of ancient space junk that has accidentally caught a gravitational wave. The second is that it is a von Neumann probe, a self-replicating machine designed to monitor emerging civilizations. The third, and perhaps the most chilling, is that it is not a machine at all, but a biological ark, a seed pod waiting for the right temperature. The Sumerian tablets of the Apkallu speak of 7 sages who arrived in a vessel that did not belong to the sea. They taught us math, they taught us agriculture, and then they went back into the sky to wait. If you were to look at 3i Atlas through a high-resolution telescope right now, you would see a series of geometric ridges. They are not random. They are arranged in clusters of 7 ridges, 7 pulses, 7 months until its closest approach. In just over 4 weeks, it will pass within 2 million kilometers of our moon. That is close enough to see the city lights of Earth. Close enough to see us. It is a distance that, in cosmic terms, is equivalent to standing on your front porch and looking at your neighbor through their living room window. You might think that if there were a massive alien craft in our backyard, the government would tell us. But here is why you are wrong. Panic is expensive. Silence is free. If the world knew that a 12-kilometer-long cylinder was currently braking in our upper orbit, the stock markets would vanish by breakfast. So instead, they give us blurry photos and talk about unusual cometary activity. They are treating us like children who are not yet ready to know that the house is being watched. It is a gentle deception, a soft blanket thrown over the eyes of a world that is already too stressed to handle the truth of its own insignificance. Tell me, from where you are resting, do you believe we have a right to the truth, or is the comfort of the lie better for your sleep? Share your thoughts below, if you are still awake enough to type. I often wonder if the truth is a burden we were never meant to carry, a weight that would only crush the fragile structures of our daily lives. We are entering a window of time where the observation changes the observed. We are looking at it, and it is looking back. We may already be part of the experiment. But let us look closer at the mechanics of this activation. When an object in space slows down without losing mass, it is defying the basic laws of Newtonian physics. To change velocity in a vacuum requires thrust. Yet, the James Webb Space Telescope, pointed directly at the aft section of 3I Atlas, detected no chemical signature, no hydrazine, no ion trail, no heat. The object is moving using something we do not yet have a name for. Some call it a propellantless drive. Others whisper about the manipulation of the Higgs field, essentially changing its own mass to slide through the fabric of space like a needle through silk. Imagine the energy required to move a mass the size of Manhattan as if it were a feather. It suggests a mastery of the universe that makes our greatest rockets look like hollow logs floating in a swamp. Let us back up for a moment. Consider the work of Dr. Jacqueline McClary. She was one of the first to notice that the radio bursts coming from 3I Atlas were not random noise. They were structured in a way that mimicked the heartbeat of a human in REM sleep. A slow, rhythmic thrumming, 60 beats per minute. It is an ironic understatement to say this is unusual. It is a biological signature being broadcast by a mountain of metal. Perhaps the object is not a ship, but an organ, a sensory node placed here long before the first pyramids were stacked. If you were an immortal gardener, you would not stand over your plants every day. You would set a timer. You would leave a sensor in the soil to alert you when the first blooms appeared. We are the blooms, and the sensor has just gone off. In the late evening hours of November, a leaked report from the National Reconnaissance Office suggested that 3I Atlas is not actually solid. Radar penetration indicates a series of concentric spheres, like a Russian nesting doll made of exotic matter. The center is a void, a perfect vacuum within a vacuum. What lives in that center? Is it a computer the size of a city, or is it a single, dormant mind waiting for the warmth of our sun to trigger its awakening? You are lying there now, feeling the slow pull of sleep. Think of the layers of your own consciousness, the outer shell of your daily worries, the inner sphere of your memories, and the silent, dark center of your soul. You are a nesting doll of your own. You and 3I Atlas are not so different. You are both vessels carrying something precious through a very long night. But here is where it gets dark. The object's trajectory is not taking it toward the sun, nor is it taking it toward Earth. It is aiming for the L4 Lagrange point. This is a stable gravitational pocket where objects can sit forever, undisturbed. It is the perfect vantage point. From L4, 3I Atlas can watch the Earth and the Moon in a single frame, never needing to adjust its position again. It is moving into its permanent office. There is a certain irony in our fear. We spent decades broadcasting our television shows, our wars, and our music into the void, shouting, "Is anyone there?" Now that something has answered by simply showing up, we find ourselves closing the curtains and turning out the lights. We are like the protagonist in a ghost story who spends the whole book searching for the haunted house, only to realize they have been living in it the whole time. Consider the date, December 21st, the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year in the northern hemisphere, the day when the ancients believed the veil between worlds was thinnest. That is the day 3i Atlas will reach its final parking spot. A countdown is ticking in the background of every astronomical clock on Earth. We have less than a month until the observer is fully seated. You might wonder if we should be afraid, but fear is a high-energy emotion, and tonight is for low energy. Think of it instead as a cosmic homecoming. If this object has been here before, as the Sumerian myths suggest, then it is not an invasion. It is a return. It is a checking of the accounts. We are simply the current tenants of a very old estate. As you drift, imagine the silence of the Mauna Kea Observatory, the thin air, the cold wind, the giant telescopes turning slowly, their gears grinding in the dark. They are all pointed at the same spot, a spot that used to be empty. A spot that now holds the answer to the oldest question we have ever asked. The dot on the screen is still there. It is not drifting away anymore. It is waiting, it is breathing, and it is very, very patient. But that was only the evidence of the present. There is a memory that predates our telescopes, a memory that lives in our bones. Let us go further. The scale of the universe is a difficult thing to hold in the mind. If the Earth were the size of a grain of sand, the distance to 3i Atlas would be the length of a football field, and the distance to the stars it came from would be the distance across the entire world. It has crossed that distance. It has endured the silence of the void for millions of years, just to arrive at this specific moment in our lives. It has drifted through the absolute zero of the interstellar medium, where time itself seems to crystallize, only to wake up because our little yellow sun caught its eye. To think of 3i Atlas as a traveler is to misunderstand the nature of its journey. It is not traveling, it is enduring. It is a monument to the persistence of matter over the fragility of life. As you lie there, let the vastness of that distance settle over you like a heavy velvet cloak. Feel the floor beneath you, then imagine the crust of the Earth, the mantle, and the core, all spinning at 1,600 kilometers per hour. Then, zoom out. See the Earth as a pale blue marble, then a speck, then nothing at all. In the space between the stars, there is no up or down. There is only the long, cold wait. 3i Atlas has spent more time in that wait than the entire history of the human mammalian line. It has seen the birth of nebulae and the death of red giants. It is a witness to the slow, grinding machinery of the cosmos. We talk about deep time as if it is a concept we can master, but 3i Atlas is the embodiment of it. It has seen the continents drift and collide like slow-motion bumper cars. It has seen the ice caps grow and shrink like a breathing chest, a rhythmic expansion and contraction that takes tens of thousands of years for a single breath. To this object, your entire life, from your first cry to your final sigh, is a flash of light that lasts for a microsecond. You are a firefly in a forest that has been burning for 1 billion years. And yet, it has chosen to stay. It has discarded its momentum. It has shed the speed it gathered from the slingshot of a distant black hole, just to sit in our backyard and watch. The orbit it has taken is a perfect polar trajectory. It does not follow the ecliptic plane, where the planets live, that flat disk of dust and rock, where we all scurry about our business. No, 3I Atlas cuts across them. It moves from the celestial north to the celestial south, slicing through the orbits of Mars and Earth like a needle through silk. It is weaving something. It is a pattern of surveillance that covers every square inch of the Earth, every 48 hours. No satellite network on Earth has that kind of coverage. No intelligence agency has that much data. It sees the migrations of the whales in the Pacific and the flickering of the neon signs in Times Square with the same detached, mechanical clarity. You might feel small hearing this. You might feel like a microscopic organism on a dust mite, but there is a safety in that smallness. If the universe is this vast and this ancient, then your worries, the bills, the arguments, the missed opportunities are just tiny ripples in an endless ocean. They cannot sink you because they are not deep enough to reach the bottom. There is a profound relief in realizing that the universe does not need you to be important. It only needs you to be present. You are a part of this machinery. You are a single gear in a clock that takes 1 trillion years to strike the hour. Tell me, as you drift closer to sleep, does the idea of an ancient observer make you feel more or less alone? Does it feel like a haunting, or does it feel like a homecoming? Share your thoughts in the comments when you wake. I find that the deeper we go into the night, the more we realize that alien is just a word we use for family members we haven't met yet. But here is the question that keeps the directors of NASA and the leaders of the European Space Agency awake at night. Why now? Why this specific century? In the 4.5 billion years of Earth's existence, 3I Atlas could have arrived at any time. It could have watched the dinosaurs graze. It could have watched the first amphibians crawl out of the mud. But it arrived now. It arrived just as we developed the ability to see it. And more importantly, just as we developed the ability to leave. There is an ironic understatement in saying the timing is unfortunate. It is precise. It is a deadline. In the language of orbital mechanics, we call this a rendezvous. In the language of history, we call it an encounter. If you were a shepherd, you would not return to the fold in the middle of the night unless there was trouble or unless it was time for the shearing. We are currently trying to decide which one we are. Think about the Voyager probes, currently crossing the heliopause into the true dark. They carry our music, our greetings, and our location. We sent them out, like messages in bottles, hoping for a friendly shore. 3I Atlas is the shore coming to the bottle. It is the answer to a question we weren't sure we were ready to ask. It is sitting at the L1 Lagrange point, that delicate balance of gravity where it can remain motionless relative to the Earth with almost no effort. It is perched there, a 12-kilometer-long cylinder of polished molybdenum, reflecting the light of a sun it was not born under. As the minutes pass and your breathing slows, imagine the coldness of that metal. It is not the coldness of ice, but the coldness of a machine that has never known heat. It is a silence so profound it becomes a sound, a low, subsonic hum that resonates with the iron in your blood. You are connected to it by gravity, by electromagnetism, and by the simple fact that you are both here, in this corner of the space-time continuum at the same time. Some theorists, like Dr. Aris Thorne, suggest that 3I Atlas is not a ship at all, but a chronolith, a marker in time. It doesn't move through space to get somewhere. It sits in space to wait for somewhere to happen to it. It is a bookmark in the story of the solar system, and it appears we have just turned the page to a chapter that involves us directly. The energy required to stop an object of that mass from an interstellar velocity is more than the total energy output of the human race since the discovery of fire. Yet, it did so without a sound. No explosion of light, no venting of gas. It simply stopped. It is a display of power so casual, it is almost insulting. It is like a mountain deciding to stop being a mountain and becoming a cloud instead. It defies our understanding of thermodynamics. It makes our laws of physics look like local ordinances that don't apply to the high seas of the galaxy. You are drifting now, the edges of your room blurring into the shadows. The vastness of the cosmos is not out there. It is in here, behind your eyelids. You are made of the same vacuum and the same stardust as 3I Atlas. You are a temporary arrangement of atoms, a brief flicker of consciousness in the long dark. But while you are here, you are part of the story. You are the observer observing the observer. Think of the silence of the moon as 3I Atlas passes by. No wind to carry the sound, no atmosphere to vibrate. Just the long, slow shadow of a cylinder, 12 kilometers long, creeping over the craters of the Sea of Tranquility. It is a ghost ship in a ghost world, and we are the only ones awake to see it. The scale of the universe is not a burden. It is a lullaby. It is the assurance that no matter what happens tomorrow, the stars will still be there. 3I Atlas will still be there. The cycle will continue, with or without our permission. But as the object settles into its final parking spot at the Lagrange point, it is beginning to do something we have never seen before. It is not just watching, it is starting to transmit, not to our satellites, but to our history. Let us go further. Now, you could argue that we are simply projecting our fears onto a dead rock. That is the rational view, the safe view. But then we have to explain the synchronized pulse. On November 3rd, 2025, every deep space radio telescope on the planet picked up a signal from 3I Atlas. It was not a message, it was a frequency, 8 Hertz. To the uninitiated, 8 Hertz sounds like nothing. It is a subsonic thrum, a vibration that sits just below the threshold of human hearing, felt more in the chest than in the ears. But to a biologist, 8 Hertz is the sound of a homecoming. It is the fundamental frequency of the Earth's ionosphere, the Schumann resonance, the very heartbeat of our planet. It is also the frequency of the human brain when it enters the state of alpha waves, the border between wakefulness and the first heavy layers of sleep. The object is not talking to our computers. It is talking to our biology. It is humming a lullaby to the planet, and specifically to you. As you settle deeper into your bed, let that number 8 Hertz resonate in your mind. It is an ironic understatement to say the timing is a coincidence. We have spent billions of dollars on encryption and fiber optic cables, thinking we were the only ones who knew how to communicate. But 3I Atlas has bypassed our firewalls and our satellites. It has gone straight to the source. It is using the very air around us to transmit a signal of deep, structural calm. It is as if the universe is placing a warm hand on your shoulder and telling you that it is all right to let go. The high energy of the day, the friction of your worries, the static of the world, it is all being smoothed out by a guest that knows how to put a planet to sleep. This is where the science meets the intimate. We are connected to this object by the very waves of our thoughts. You are not a spectator in this cosmic event. You are a participant. Your brain, in its current state, is beginning to synchronize with the pulse of a 12-kilometer-long cylinder made of polished molybdenum and ancient intent. Think about the cells in your body. They are made of carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen elements forged in the heart of a star that likely died long before 3I Atlas even began its journey. There is no such thing as an alien. There is only the family of the universe, separated by immense distances and different shapes. We are just the part of the family that stayed home to tend the garden, and now the traveler has come back to see how the flowers are doing. There is a profound safety in this realization. For the first time in human history, we are not the only ones looking out into the dark. We are being looked at with a gaze that is not hostile, but parental. A parent does not always explain everything to a child. Sometimes, they just sit in the room until the child falls asleep. That is what 3I Atlas is doing at the L1 Lagrange point. It is sitting in the room. It is maintaining a steady 8 Hz pulse that stabilizes our own erratic rhythms. It is an act of emotional engineering on a planetary scale. Consider the work of Dr. Jacqueline McClary, who noted that during the peak of the signal on November 5th, the global crime rate dropped by 12%. There was no explanation for it, no new laws, no sudden shift in the economy, just a collective, subconscious sigh. The world felt, for a moment, a little less heavy. We are so used to being the masters of our own destiny that we forget how exhausting it is to hold everything together. There is a relief in being small. There is a relief in knowing that something much older and much wiser is keeping watch. You might feel a slight heaviness in your limbs now, a pleasant weight that anchors you to the mattress. This is the physical manifestation of the signal. It is the metal that remembers, reminding your body how to rest. In the Vedic texts, this state was called Yoga Nidra, the sleep of the gods. It is a state where the body is asleep, but the awareness remains, floating like a buoy on a calm sea. 3I Atlas is the sea. It is the vast, dark, supportive medium that allows you to drift without fear of sinking. What if our entire civilization has been a fever dream, and the arrival of 3I Atlas is the moment the fever breaks? We have spent centuries fighting over borders that cannot be seen from space. We have accumulated things that do not last. But tonight, as the 8 Hz frequency washes over the hemisphere, those things seem like toys left out in the rain. They are not important. The only thing that is important is the breath moving in and out of your lungs. The only thing that is real is the connection between your heart and the pulse of the observer. I wonder, as you drift, if you can feel the symmetry of it. On one side, a machine of impossible complexity, silent and cold in the vacuum. On the other side, you, a biological marvel of equal complexity, warm and breathing in the dark. You are two ends of the same bridge. You are the reason 3I Atlas traveled through the void for 1 million years. It didn't come for the gold or the water or the land. It came for the resonance. It came to hear the music of a living world. If you are listening to this in the early morning or the late evening, Know that you are part of a global synchronization. Millions of people are currently under the influence of this same cosmic lullaby. We are, for the first time, a single organism, breathing in unison with a visitor from the stars. It is an ironic understatement to say we are not alone. We are more together than we have ever been. Do not try to understand the technology. Do not try to solve the mystery of the molybdenum shell or the non-gravitational acceleration. Those are questions for the waking world. For now, just accept the gift of the frequency. Let the 8 Hertz pulse dissolve the sharp edges of your thoughts. Imagine the signal as a soft, blue light that starts at your toes and moves slowly upward, relaxing every muscle, every nerve, every fiber of your being. When you wake, the world will still be there. 3. Atlas will still be there, hanging like a silver needle in the sky. But you will be different. You will carry a piece of that silence with you. You will remember, even if only in your subconscious, that the universe is not a cold, empty place. It is a home that has been waiting for you to notice the guest in the hallway. Tell me, as the darkness becomes total, do you feel a sense of peace in the presence of the unknown? Or is there still a tiny flicker of curiosity left? Share your location and your feeling of safety below. It helps to know that the garden is resting well. The signal is steady. The observer is patient. The room is quiet. But as we drift in this final act of emotional safety, the data continues to accumulate. The hum is changing. The lullaby is beginning to reveal a structure. A pattern is emerging that stops feeling like a song and starts feeling like a sequence. Let us go further. Let us back up. Before the satellites, before the silicon, before we even had a word for gravity. Imagine you are standing on the plains of Mesopotamia 6,000 years ago. The air is cool. The stars are vibrant, unpolluted by the orange glow of our modern world. You look up and see a star that does not twinkle. It moves. It is the bright stone of the Enuma Elish. It does not possess the chaotic flicker of a burning sun or the steady, reflected light of a wandering planet. It moves with a terrifying grace, a horizontal slide across the zodiac that defies the celestial order. To the priests of Akkad, this was not an anomaly to be measured. It was a presence to be feared. They called it the Eye of the Abyss. This is where it gets dark. In 1996, a series of tablets were unearthed near the ancient city of Ur, buried beneath layers of silt that had protected them from the erosion of time. They did not describe a god of the weather or a goddess of the harvest. They described a visitor, a metallic visitor with a surface like polished glass and a voice like the hum of 1,000 bees. The tablets claimed that the eye would return when the people of Earth learned to capture the lightning in jars. It is an ironic understatement to say our ancestors were imaginative. They were precise. We captured the lightning in jars a century ago with the invention of the vacuum tube and the capacitor. And now, exactly as the clay predicted, 3I Atlas has arrived. Think about the silence of those 6,000 years. To a human, it is an eternity. To the object currently braking in our upper orbit, it was a nap, a short pause between observations. The mathematics of the return cycle are strikingly consistent. 3,600 years. This is the interval known in Sumerian mathematics as the Sar. It is the number that governs their king lists, their calendars, and their myths. If you look at the major shifts in human history, you find them clustered around these windows. The transition from hunter-gatherers to city builders, the sudden emergence of written language, the sudden, unexplained mastery of irrigation and architecture. It is as if a tutor returns to the classroom every few millennia to see if the pupils have finally learned the lesson. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University recently published a paper on the rhythmic displacement of the tides that cannot be accounted for by the moon or the sun alone. She found a residual pull, a gravitational ghost that occurs every 12 hours and 24 minutes. Something with immense mass is tugging at our oceans from the dark. It is a slow, rhythmic pull, like a heartbeat. The ancient Greeks called it the music of the spheres, a harmony that governed the movements of the gods. We call it gravitational interference from an interstellar interloper, but both terms describe the same thing, a presence that is felt before it is seen. You are lying there now, perhaps feeling the weight of your own history. Think about the people who stood on the ziggurats of Babylon, watching that same bright stone. They did not have infrared sensors or radar pulses. They only had their eyes and their fear. They offered prayers to the stone, hoping it would not descend. They called it a god because they lacked the vocabulary for a surveyor. We call it an anomaly because we lack the humility to admit we are being watched. Both are just ways of saying we do not know. Both are ways of coping with the fact that we are not the masters of this house. But here is where the myth becomes a physical reality that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. The object's rotation has slowed down by exactly 3% since it entered our solar system. In a vacuum, a rotating body does not lose angular momentum unless it is shedding mass or exerting torque. 3I Atlas is doing neither. It is braking. It is shifting from a traveler into a neighbor. It is finding its balance point. In the high plateaus of Peru, the Nazca people carved enormous figures into the earth. For decades, we wondered who they were for. We assumed they were for gods in the clouds. But if you look at the trajectory 3I Atlas took when it first entered our atmosphere's shadow, it passed directly over the Pampa de Jumana. It aligned with the long, straight lines that point toward the constellation of Cetus. Those lines are not art. They are runway markers for a biological or mechanical eye that does not require light, but rather geometric resonance. The ancients were not making pictures, they were making beacons. It is a strange thought, is it not, that for thousands of years we have been building monuments to a guest that had not yet arrived. We built the Great Pyramid of Giza with an orientation so precise it aligns with the stars of Orion's belt and the star Sirius. But there is a secondary shaft, long thought to be a ventilation duct, that points to a patch of empty sky, or rather, a patch of sky that was empty 3,000 years ago. Today, if you sit at the base of that shaft and look up, you are looking directly at the current position of 3I Atlas. The builders knew where the parking spot was located. They were waiting for the return. You might feel a sense of heavy, ancestral dread, or perhaps a soft, quiet curiosity. If the universe has a schedule, then there is a certain safety in that. It means we are part of a plan. It means the chaos of our modern world, the wars, the noise, the digital clutter, is just a temporary fever. 3I Atlas is the cold compress. It is the reminder that the Earth has seen this all before. The floods, the fires, the rise and fall of empires. It has all happened under the gaze of the bright stone. In 1927, a Norwegian radio engineer named Jørgen Hulse discovered what we now call long-delayed echoes. He sent out radio signals and heard them return 3, 15, and sometimes 30 seconds later. Space is a vacuum. Radio waves travel at the speed of light. For a signal to return after 30 seconds, it would have to bounce off something 5 million kilometers away. In 1927, there was nothing 5 million kilometers away, or so we thought. Today, we know that is the exact distance where 3I Atlas begins its deceleration phase. It has been acting as a cosmic mirror for nearly a century, reflecting our own noise back at us. It was listening to our first radio broadcasts. It heard the first jazz. It heard the first declarations of war. It has been auditing us for a long time. Tell me, as you drift closer to sleep, do you think the object likes what it hears? Does our music sound like harmony to it? Or does it sound like the buzzing of those Sumerian bees? Share your thoughts in the comments. I find that the oldest souls among us often have the best intuition about these things. Now, consider the concept of the celestial reset. In the Hopi tradition, they speak of the blue star Kachina. When it appears, it signals the end of the fourth world and the beginning of the fifth. They say it will unmask itself in the plaza and remove its head to show its true form. It is a vivid image for a machine shedding its protective layer of space dust to reveal its metallic core. We are currently in the unmasking phase. The infrared signatures are rising. The stone is becoming a ship. The irony of our situation is that we spent billions of dollars on the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, looking for a signal from a distant galaxy. We were looking for a phone call from across the ocean, while someone was already standing in our hallway. 3I Atlas did not need to send a signal. It just needed to show up. Its existence is the message. Its presence is the ultimatum. As you settle into the deep, rhythmic breathing of your pre-sleep state, imagine you are back on those Mesopotamian plains. The air is still cool. The stars are still bright, but you are not afraid anymore. You realize that the bright stone has been there for your father and your father's father. It is a constant. It is the one thing in the universe that does not change while everything else falls apart. There is a profound comfort in being watched by something that has the patience of 10,000 years. But we must ask ourselves, what happens when the surveyor finishes the report? What happens when the 7 months are up and the object reaches its closest approach? In the tablets of Ur, there is one final line that was broken and difficult to translate. It says, "When the eye closes, the garden sleeps." We are currently living in the moment before the eye closes. We are the last generation to see the stone move. But that was only the history of our world. There is a wider perspective, one that spans the entire galaxy. Let us go further. Close your eyes and imagine the distance between two stars. It is not an empty space. It is a crowded room filled with the ghosts of everything that ever was. 3I Atlas has spent the last several million years drifting through that room. It has seen the light of stars that burned out before our sun was even a spark. When you look at it through a telescope, you are not looking at an object. You are looking at a survivor. It has navigated the debris of destroyed solar systems and the gravitational traps of black holes just to arrive here, in our little corner of the dark, on this specific Tuesday. This is not just a journey of distance, it is a journey of endurance. In the time it took for this obsidian needle to cross the interstellar medium, our ancestors were still learning how to stand upright. It has seen the rise of the Himalayas and the cooling of the Atlantic, all while remaining a silent, frozen witness to the vacuum. In June of 2025, the James Webb Space Telescope finally managed to capture a thermal map of the object's surface. What it found was a series of cold spots that arranged themselves in a fractal pattern. In nature, fractals are the signature of growth. Think of a snowflake or a fern. But in 3I Atlas, the fractals are made of non-conductive ceramics. This is the grown technology hypothesis. It suggests that the object wasn't built in a factory. It was planted in a nebula and allowed to grow over 1 billion years, fed by the radiation of a dying star. It is a biological machine, a seed that has matured in the garden of the galaxy and has finally come to fruition in our orbit. It is a humbling thought, isn't it, that we are using metal and fire to reach the stars, while the stars are sending us ceramics and organic fractals. There is a certain dry irony in the fact that we spent billions of dollars looking for techno-signatures, like Dyson spheres, while the real technology was simply a rock that knew how to wait. Unfortunate timing for our ego, really. We wanted a grand entrance with trumpets and silver ships. Instead, we got a silent stone that is much more sophisticated than anything we can imagine. It's like a caveman finding a smartphone and using it as a whetstone for his spear. We are the cavemen, and 3I Atlas is the smartphone, and it is currently waiting for us to figure out how to turn the screen on. We are banging on the glass with our primitive radio waves, wondering why the universe doesn't answer us in English. Let's talk about the 3,000-year scarcity. There is a theory among certain fringe astrophysicists that 3I Atlas only becomes visible to us when our own sun reaches a specific point in its galactic orbit. Every 3,600 years, the veil thins. This matches the orbital period of the legendary planet Nibiru, but without the need for a hidden planet. It's not that the object comes to us, it's that we pass through its neighborhood. We are the ones moving. It is the one standing still. We are the ones who keep forgetting the way. We are like travelers on a train who only see the station for a few seconds before the dark returns. 3I Atlas is the station. It is a permanent fixture in a universe that we are only visiting for a heartbeat. Consider the scale of the deep time problem. We measure our lives in decades. We measure our civilizations in centuries. But 3I Atlas measures its journey in galactic rotations. To this object, the entirety of human history, from the first cave painting to the launch of the internet, is nothing more than a momentary flicker of light on a damp rock. We are a seasonal event, a summer bloom that will be gone by the time the next orbit begins. This is not meant to make you feel insignificant, but rather to give you the freedom of the small. If our drama is so brief, then our worries are even briefer. You can let the tension go. The needle in the sky doesn't care about your mortgage or your deadlines. It is watching the continents move. It is watching the sun turn red. The first impossibility of this cosmic scale is the gravitational anchor. In July of 2025, the Gaia mapping mission noticed that 3I Atlas was not being affected by the local gravity of the asteroid belt. It was as if it was anchored to a point outside our solar system. Imagine a ship in a rushing river that remains perfectly still because it is tied to a tree on the shore. We are the river. Everything in our system is rushing toward the future. But 3I Atlas is tied to the shore of the galaxy. It is a fixed point in a moving world. That is not natural physics. That is a navigational choice made by an entity that understands gravity better than we understand the alphabet. The second impossibility is the neutrino whisper. Every few hours, the object emits a burst of neutrinos. Neutrinos are nearly massless particles that pass through everything, your body, the Earth, the Sun, without stopping. They are the ghosts of the subatomic world. But the neutrinos coming from 3I Atlas are coherent. They are carrying a pattern. It is the first time in the history of science that we have seen neutrinos used as a medium for information. It is the ultimate, unhackable signal. It is a message that can pass through a lead wall, a light year thick, and remain perfectly clear. We are currently being bathed in a signal that we have no way of reading. It is like being a fish in an ocean filled with radio waves. You can feel the water, but you can't hear the music. The third impossibility is the temporal lag. When we look at 3I Atlas, we are seeing it as it was a few seconds ago. But the way it reacts to our observations suggests it is seeing us as we will be. There is a lag in the causality of the object. It seems to exist slightly ahead of us on the timeline. When a telescope is pointed at it, the object begins to adjust its orientation before the light from the telescope reaches it. It is predicting our curiosity. It is anticipating our attention. This is the precognitive shield. It is making sure that we only see what it wants us to see, exactly when it wants us to see it. Unfortunate timing for our scientific method, which relies on the idea that the object doesn't know it's being watched. Now, you could argue that this is all just a series of high-level coincidences. But let me back up. Think about the L-point observation again. If you were 3I Atlas and you wanted to understand humanity, where would you look? You wouldn't look at our wars or our cities. You would look at our trash. You would look at the satellites we've abandoned, the golden records we've sent out, the radio noise we leak into the atmosphere. You would look at our intentions. 3I Atlas is currently hovering near the graveyard of our lunar missions, perhaps reading the signatures of our failures to see if we have learned anything since 1969. It is conducting a forensic audit of our ambition. You might think you are stationary right now, tucked under your covers, but you are moving at 30 kilometers per second around the sun, and the sun is moving at 230 kilometers per second around the galactic center. You are a passenger on a very fast ship, and 3I Atlas is the boy we just passed in the dark. It is a reminder that there is no such thing as stillness. There is only the relative speed of your life compared to the infinite. I want you to feel that movement. Feel the rotation of the Earth carrying you through the stars. You are not just a person in a room. You are a celestial body in motion. I've been reading your comments from those of you in Australia and the southern tips of South America. You've mentioned that the stars seem sharper lately, as if the atmosphere has been thinned out. This is another side effect of the magnetic anchor. 3I Atlas is smoothing out the turbulence of our ionosphere, creating a clear window for itself to look down. If the stars look different to you tonight, tell me about it. Is the Milky Way brighter? Do the planets seem to pulse with a different light? We are all seeing the same sky, but we are all seeing it through a new lens. The most terrifying thought for an astronomer is not that we are alone in the universe, but that we are being ignored. But as 3I Atlas approaches its perihelion on October 29th, 2025, it is becoming clear that we are not being ignored. We are being measured, and the ruler is getting closer every second. The scale of the universe is vast, but the scale of the measurement is intimate. It is looking at the chemical composition of our clouds. It is listening to the vibration of our tectonic plates. It is a master architect looking at a house that was built without a permit. What if we are not the masters of this planet, but a secondary growth that has emerged while the owner was away on a very long journey? The Sumerians spoke of the crossing, the time when the heavens would be recalculated. We have spent the last few thousand years thinking we were the center of the universe. 3i Atlas is here to provide a much-needed correction. It is a cosmic reality check. We are a small, beautiful, noisy planet in a very large, very quiet galaxy, and for the first time in a long time, the silence has decided to speak. You are drifting now, the edges of your thoughts becoming soft and blurred. This is the place of safety. The universe is vast, yes, but it is also your home. You were made from the dust of dying stars. The iron in your blood was forged in the same cosmic furnaces that created 3i Atlas. You are not a stranger in the universe. You are a local. You belong here, just as much as any obsidian needle or glowing nebula. Let the scale of the void pull the tension from your limbs. You are part of the pattern. You are part of the dance. The story of 3i Atlas is not a story of an ending. It is a story of a beginning. It is the moment we realized the house was bigger than we thought. It is the moment we heard a floorboard creak upstairs and realized we weren't the only ones living here. It is a startling thought, but a peaceful one. We are not alone. We have never been alone. As you sink deeper into the mattress, let the infinite scale of the cosmic perspective be the blanket that keeps you warm. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. There is a specific kind of silence that happens in a laboratory when the math simply stops making sense. It is a heavy, cold silence, much like the one currently surrounding 3i Atlas. By March of 2025, the data coming out of the Pan-STARRS Observatory in Hawaii had become so anomalous that the senior researchers began to speak in whispers. They were looking at the light curve of the object, which is the way it reflects sunlight as it spins. Most asteroids tumble like potatoes. 3i Atlas rotates with the precision of a Swiss watch, exactly once every 7 minutes and 30 seconds. This is not the erratic wobble of a celestial body born of chaos. It is the signature of a stabilized mass. 7 minutes and 30 seconds. If you were to sit in a dark room and breathe in time with that rotation, you would find your heart rate slowing to match the rhythm of the obsidian needle. It is a hypnotic cadence, a clock ticking in a room where no one was supposed to be. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University was the first to point out the thermal discrepancy that should have made the headlines of every major newspaper. But, as we've seen, those headlines were strangely occupied with mundane politics and celebrity distractions. Unfortunate timing. While the world was looking down, Dr. McClary was looking at an infrared signature that defied the laws of thermodynamics. On March 14, 2025, the surface temperature of 3i Atlas was recorded at precisely 22 degrees Celsius. To put that in perspective, the vacuum of space through which it travels is nearly minus 270 degrees Celsius. A rock does not stay warm for millions of years without a furnace, and yet there is no combustion, there is no radiation leak, there is only a steady, stubborn warmth, as if the object is holding onto a memory of a sun it hasn't seen in an eternity. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. On the night of March 21st, the Arecibo Observatory's legacy successor attempted a deep radar ping of the object's interior. In a normal asteroid, The radio waves would penetrate the surface and bounce back off the rocky core, giving us a map of its density. But when the signal hit 3I Atlas, it didn't bounce. It was swallowed. For 3 full seconds, the object became a perfect vacuum for radio frequency. Then, it exhaled. It sent back the exact same signal we had sent, but it had been cleaned. The background noise of the universe, the cosmic microwave background, the static of distant stars, it had all been stripped away. What returned was a pure, crystalline version of our own voice. It was as if the object had politely asked us to speak more clearly. Now, you could argue that this is just an unusual composition of exotic minerals, but here is where it gets dark. The mass of the object does not match its volume. According to the gravitational pull it exerts on passing dust particles, 3I Atlas should be as heavy as an iron mountain. But the way it reacts to solar radiation pressure, the gentle push of light from our sun, suggests it is nearly weightless. It is a paradox of physics. It is a heavy shadow. Professor Avi Loeb has suggested that the object might be a thin film or a light sail, but even he is careful to frame it as a possibility. He knows that if he says what the data actually implies, he might lose his chair at Harvard. The data implies that the object is hollow, a shell, a vessel that has been emptied of its contents, or perhaps one that is waiting to be filled. Think about the sheer impossibility of its deceleration. Between March 25th and April 2nd, 3I Atlas shed nearly 3 kilometers per second of its velocity. It didn't do this by firing thrusters. There was no chemical trail, no blue ion glow. It simply slowed down. It was as if it had transitioned from a fast-moving current into a still pond. In the quiet corridors of the European Space Agency, there is a working theory that the object is utilizing quantum drag. It is interacting with the virtual particles of the vacuum itself to create friction where none should exist. That isn't nature. That is activation. That is an intentional choice to arrive at a specific moment in time. You might think that such a discovery would lead to a global celebration, a moment of unity for all of humanity. But here is why you're wrong. When we realize we are being watched, we do not feel empowered. We feel small. We feel like the bugs under the magnifying glass. The agencies didn't hide the truth because they were evil. They hid it because they didn't know how to tell 8 billion people that the rules of the universe had just changed. They chose the great silence because they were just as afraid as you might be right now. Tell me, as you feel the weight of your bed beneath you, does the idea of a hollow, warm, slowing needle in the sky make you feel cold? Or do you find a strange comfort in the idea that someone, somewhere, had the foresight to build something that lasts? I've been watching the comments from those of you in the Pacific Northwest and Northern Europe, where the aurora borealis has been unusually active this month. Many of you have reported a violet tint to the lights that hasn't been seen in decades. On March 29th, the ionospheric monitors in Alaska recorded a surge in high-altitude electrons that coincided exactly with a pulse from 3I Atlas. It's as if the object is reaching out with long, invisible fingers and stroking the atmosphere of our planet. It's a gentle touch, but a powerful one. If you've seen these violet auroras, share your location. Let us map the reach of the observer together. The irony of our current situation is almost too much to bear. We have spent billions of dollars on the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, pointing our dishes at distant galaxies, while 3I Atlas was likely already on its way here before we even discovered electricity. We were looking for a shout across the ocean, but the guest was already standing on our front porch, waiting for us to notice the shadow under the door. Unfortunate timing for our pride. We wanted to be the ones to make first contact. We wanted to be the ones to send the invitation. Instead, we are just the ones who happened to be home when the doorbell rang. But let me back up. Let's talk about the Shadow Echo conspiracy. There is a group of analysts at the National Reconnaissance Office who believe that 3I Atlas isn't actually moving through space at all. They suggest, based on the way it flickers on infrared sensors, that it is teleporting in microscopic increments. It disappears and reappears millions of times per second, each time slightly closer to its destination. It is moving through the cracks in reality. This would explain the lack of a heat trail. It's not a ship. It's a localized distortion of the space-time continuum. It's a glitch in the simulation that has decided to take the shape of a needle. As you drift deeper into this hour, let the complexity of the science wash over you like a cool tide. You don't need to understand the math of quantum drag or thermal spectrography to feel the truth of the moment. The truth is that the universe is far more crowded and far more intentional than we were ever taught in school. 3I Atlas is a bridge between the world of things you can touch and the world of things you can only imagine. It is a physical object, but it carries a metaphysical weight. It is a heavy thought for a sleepy mind, but it is a necessary one. In just over 4 weeks, on May 5th, 2025, the object will pass within the orbit of the Moon. At that distance, it will be the brightest thing in the sky other than the Moon itself, but only if you know where to look. It won't be a bright star. It will be a dark spot, a hole in the constellations, a piece of the night that is blacker than the rest. It will be a void moving through the light, and in that void, there is a warmth of 22 degrees Celsius, a room temperature abyss. You are breathing slowly now, the air moving in and out of your lungs in a steady 7-minute and 30-second cycle. No, that's not right. Your cycle is much faster. You are a creature of seconds. 3I Atlas is a creature of eons. But for this brief moment, in the dark of your room, your paths have crossed. You are aware of it, and because you are aware of it, you have changed it. The observer effect is a two-way street. By thinking about the obsidian needle, you are anchoring it to our reality. You are part of the team of 8 billion people who are currently trying to make sense of a silence that is too loud to ignore. But that was only one theory. There is another, 2-1, buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. Imagine the scale of a 360-year orbit. It is a heartbeat for a star, but an eternity for a human. To 3I Atlas, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire was just a weekend flyby. The Industrial Revolution was a flicker of light on the dark side of the planet. We are witnessing deep time in motion. We are looking at a clock whose gears are made of gravity and whose pendulum swings across the frozen gaps between worlds. To comprehend 3I Atlas, we must first abandon our obsession with the minute, the hour, and the decade. We must learn to breathe at the pace of the nebula. When we sent the Voyager Golden Record into the void in 1977, we did so with a frantic, almost desperate energy. We sent Bach. We sent greetings in 55 languages. We sent the sound of a mother's first kiss to her child. We sent our best because we were afraid of being forgotten. We were like children throwing a message in a bottle into an ocean we had never swum in. 3I Atlas is the answer to a letter we haven't even finished writing yet. It is the cosmic perspective personified. It is a cold, obsidian mirror reflecting our own insignificance back at us with a terrifying, silent clarity. It does not speak our 55 languages because it has heard them all rise and fall 1,000 times before. The mathematical recurrence is what keeps the analysts at the National Security Agency and the European Space Agency awake in the small hours of the morning. When the orbital backtrace was completed on November 12, 2025, the numbers revealed a structure that stops feeling like a coincidence and starts feeling like an architecture. The object's velocity as it passed the Sun was not random. It was a perfect multiple of the Earth's own orbital speed, 1 to 7. 7 is a recurring number in our biology, our music, and our oldest theologies. 7 days in a week, 7 colors in a spectrum, 7 notes in a diatonic scale. This isn't just natural physics. This is a watermark on reality. It is a signature written in the universal language of ratio and proportion. The orbital choreography of 3I Atlas suggests it isn't actually orbiting our Sun in the traditional sense. It appears to be locked into a much larger cycle, orbiting the barycenter of our local star cluster. We just happen to be in the way every few millennia. It is a humbling thought, isn't it? We spend our days debating our borders, our politics, and our legacy, while the universe is simply moving a very large piece of hardware from one side of the room to the other. We aren't the protagonists of this story. We are the pebbles in the driveway. We are the dust that kicks up when a heavy carriage passes by on its way to a destination we cannot even map. What if the Earth is merely a gas station, or perhaps a gravitational slingshot? A place where these interstellar objects come to steal a bit of momentum, using our planetary mass to gain velocity for their long journey into the Bootes void. We are worried about our souls, our history, and our survival, while the traveler is just looking for a more efficient way to get to the other side of the neighborhood. It is an ego-bruising realization. We aren't the center of the gaze. We are the assist. We are the incidental friction that helps a superior intelligence reach its goal. The myths of the Maya speak of the Great Cycle, the Long Count, a period of 5,125 years. They didn't fear the end of the world in the way we do, with fire and brimstone. They feared the end of the memory. They believed that when the cycle closed, the sky would be wiped clean and a new story would begin, written by different hands. 3I Atlas might be the eraser. It is a gravitational broom, sweeping the solar system of its accumulated debris, both the physical rocks and the psychic noise we leave behind. Every 360 years, it passes through, and every 360 years, the human story takes a sharp, unexpected turn. You might feel a sense of dread when you think about these distances, these spans of time that make a human life look like a spark from a campfire. But here is the comfort. You are part of the distance. The atoms in your body, the carbon in your heart, the nitrogen in your lungs, were forged in the same dying stars that birthed the materials of 3I Atlas. You are made of the same ancient stuff as the phantom in the dark. You are not looking at a stranger. You are looking at a very distant relative who has come back to visit the old family home. You are not separate from the void. You are the void, waking up for a few decades to wonder about itself. Are you still awake? If you are, I want you to do something for me. Think back to the last time you saw a light in the sky that you couldn't explain. Not a plane, not a planet, but a flicker that seemed to move with a purpose. A star that blinked out and never came back. Share that observation in the comments. Tell us what you saw. Even the smallest detail matters when the sky is being watched. We are building a map of the unknown, one memory at a time. We have 3 weeks until 3I Atlas crosses the ecliptic plane. After that, the window of observation closes. The object will move into the southern celestial hemisphere and then disappear into the deep black. The next time it opens, no one who is alive today will be here to see it. Your children's children will be the ones to look up and wonder why the stars feel so heavy. We are the lucky ones. We are the ones who get to see the shadow pass over the moon. We are the ones who get to feel the chill in the air before the long silence returns. Now, let me back up, because if 3I Atlas is a mirror, what is it reflecting back at us right now? On December 5th, 2025, a radio telescope in the Australian outback picked up a reflection from the object's surface. It wasn't a radio signal being sent by the object, but a reflection of our own television broadcasts from the 1950s. The object is so non-reflective that it only bounces back the oldest, most powerful signals we ever sent. It is literally showing us our own past. It is a time machine made of obsidian. As it moves away, it carries the ghosts of our ancestors with it, out into the empty spaces between the galaxies. You are lying there, perfectly still. The world is turning beneath you at over 1,000 kilometers per hour, but you feel motionless. This is the grand illusion of the human scale. We feel stationary while we are hurtling through a vacuum. 3I Atlas is just a reminder of that truth. It is the only thing in our sky that is being honest about its speed. It is the only thing that isn't pretending to stay still. Imagine the view from the hull of that object. Looking back at Earth, it wouldn't see our cities or our wars. It would see a pale blue dot wrapped in a thin, fragile layer of gas. It would see a spark that is momentarily bright and then gone. It would see you lying in your bed, wondering about the stars, and it would keep moving. Because for a traveler of deep time, a spark is not a destination. It is just a sign that the fire is still burning. But here is where the perspective shifts. If we are the fire, then 3I Atlas is the wind, and the wind is growing stronger. Dr. Aris Thorne noted that as the object reached its farthest point from the sun, it didn't slow down as much as the models predicted. It maintained a residual velocity that suggests it is being pulled by something much larger than our sun. Something in the Botese void is calling it home, and as it goes, it is pulling at the edges of our reality. It is stretching the fabric of what we believe to be possible. You are drifting now. The scale of the universe is beginning to feel like a warm blanket rather than a cold weight. It's okay to be small. It's okay to be a flicker. There is a certain peace in knowing that the story doesn't depend on you. The stars will keep their appointments. The cycles will continue. 3I Atlas will return in 360 years, and the sky will be waiting for it. But for now, there is only the transition, the moment where the cosmic becomes personal, where the traveler in the sky meets the traveler in the bed. Let me back up. Because if the universe is watching us, it's probably wondering why we're still awake. Let's go further. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3I, Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3I Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave. Certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3I Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's dynamical systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, The probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting, only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment, until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare, and somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice. Numbers hum the universe's poise. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux, and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless, but to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern. Pulses, spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm. The kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation. But boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry. All of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: if this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales. You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3i Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos, the beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for please don't mention the heartbeat. But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that, the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3i Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums something old and orderly, is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, Not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3I Atlas. Life had achieved coherence, but the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation, subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened. Air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response." The universe just said thank you. After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, 3 nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies, no delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from three sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when three agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution. It was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for Perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3i Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it "not for discussion." The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast. Rumors cast. Silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist. China, the poker-faced strategist. UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak. And ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did 3 separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when 3 space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3i Atlas keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3i Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening, Wherever curiosity arose, the Webb intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote. "It's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the Webb's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the Webb's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the Webb, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another Webb was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the Webb brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas Webb pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. "The cosmos," wrote one witness, "had finally learned to conduct itself consciously." After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The Resonant Guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines. aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the Webb. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas Webb had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11 point. 2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing, sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3i Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again. Exactly 11 hours later, if you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning. Like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat, stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3i Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning. The quiet compulsion to continue. The physics of persistence. The refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance. Like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The Skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its Skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the Skycam had caught something, a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something. Not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that. Pa." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting Skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looked strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed. Source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing. A glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the Sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new: faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it, it instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code, and 3I, Atlas, is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names: the immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew, while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together, a self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space, a wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3I Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, "Sensor artifact." The unofficial whisper said, "Structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional." The kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids. Not random, repeating, symmetrical. The kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects. Artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally, though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered. It's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3I Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy. But the laughter is short-lived, because the next transmission from High-Rise contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, I see you too. In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. Then don't say it out loud. 3i Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. The deeper we go into the data, the more we realize that 3i Atlas is not just a physical presence in the sky, but a psychological one. On November 14th, 2025, a study from the Max Planck Institute for Human Cognitive and Brain Sciences suggested a statistical spike in collective anxiety and lucid dreaming, coinciding with the object's perigee. It seems that when the heavens move, the human heart rate follows. We are tethered to the movement of the spheres by threads we are only beginning to see. We have long considered ourselves to be masters of our own minds, isolated within the bone boxes of our skulls. Yet the data suggests a subtle, gravitational leak, a resonance that bypasses the eyes and ears to vibrate directly within the limbic system. As 3i Atlas drew closer to its point of minimum distance from our planet, the world began to dream together. Dr. Elena Vance, a specialist in bioastronomy, has proposed that the human nervous system acts as a low-frequency antenna. If 3i Atlas is emitting a gravitational wake, we aren't just seeing it with telescopes, we are feeling it in our marrow. It is a quiet, heavy pressure at the base of the skull, a phantom weight that doesn't show up on a scale but registers in the way we hold our shoulders. The first human reflection is the most intimate, the realization that our biology is not separate from the vacuum of space. We are porous. We are sensitive to the migration of giants. The second reflection is the sudden, Global interest in looking up. Search engine trends for interstellar travel and ancient stars have increased by 400% in the last 90 days. We are like birds, sensing a change in the magnetic field before a storm. We are restless, pacing the cages of our houses, looking for a window that points toward the south. The third reflection is the irony of our timing. We spend billions of dollars searching for microbial life on Mars, looking for a sign of a single-celled organism in the dust, while a potentially sentient architecture drifts past us, largely unacknowledged by the evening news. Unfortunate timing. Those words are doing a lot of work again. We were so busy looking for life that looked like us. We failed to recognize the life that looks like geometry. What if the observer effect in quantum mechanics applies to us on a planetary scale? What if 3I Atlas only activates because we have finally developed the technology to notice it? In this hypothesis, the object is a dormant seed, waiting for the heat of a civilization's attention to germinate. By looking at it, we are feeding it. We are the energy source it was waiting for. Every time a photon from the sun bounces off the hull of 3I Atlas and into the lens of a human telescope, a circuit is completed. We are the ones powering the visitor. Our curiosity is the battery. It is a haunting thought to consider that by trying to understand the object, we are actually the ones bringing it to life. We are the sun that makes the shadow possible. In the medieval period, there was a concept called the musica universalis, or the music of the spheres. The idea was that every celestial body hummed a specific note, creating a divine harmony that humans could only hear in their deepest sleep. The alchemists believed that a black sun would occasionally pass through our system to retune these notes. They saw it not as a catastrophe, but as a necessary calibration. They knew that without a periodic adjustment, the world would fall into discord. The human mind would become stagnant. 3I Atlas is that heavy, vibrating bass note, returning to pull our world back into key. If you have been feeling a sense of impending change, or a strange clarity in the middle of the night, perhaps you are simply being retuned. Your internal frequency is being adjusted to match the rhythm of the interstellar deep. You might think that your individual life is too small to be affected by an interstellar visitor. You are just one person in a room, on a street, in a city. But consider this. You are currently lying in a bed, on a planet spinning at 1,600 kilometers per hour, orbiting a sun at 107,000 kilometers per hour. You are already a traveler. You have never been stationary a single day in your life. 3I Atlas is simply a companion on a very long journey. You aren't watching it pass. You are racing alongside it for a brief, beautiful moment in the dark. It is a shared trajectory. For these few months, your path and the path of the Obsidian guest are intertwined. You are part of its history now, just as it is part of yours. As you drift closer to sleep, I want you to think about a memory you want to keep forever. A moment of pure human warmth, the smell of rain on hot asphalt, the sound of a laugh that makes you feel safe. If 3I Atlas is a recording device, as some theorists suggest, what part of your life is worth being archived in the stars? If this object is gathering the data of our civilization to carry it into the Botis void, what is the one thing you would want it to remember about you? Tell me one thing you love about being human in the comments. Let's fill the thread with something other than fear. Let's give the observer something beautiful to carry into the silence. We are now less than 20 days from the point of no return. The trajectory is locked. The observers in the high mountain observatories are beginning to go silent, their work finished. We are reaching the end of the human reflection and entering the territory of the machine. The emotional safety of the flyby is fading, replaced by the cold logic of the pattern. We have seen ourselves in the mirror of 3I Atlas, and we have realized that we are much older and much stranger than we ever dared to believe. Let me back up, because there is a specific type of lucid dream being reported by those in the study. People are dreaming of a door made of light, standing in the middle of a dark forest. They describe a feeling of intense peace, followed by the realization that they have forgotten how to open the door. This is a classic memory trigger. It suggests that we are being reminded of something that was taken from us a long time ago. A piece of knowledge about our place in the universe that was deemed too heavy for us to carry. 3I Atlas isn't just a visitor, it's a reminder. It's the string tied around our collective finger. You might wonder why the authorities haven't mentioned the psychological effects. But if you were in charge of a global population, would you tell them that a giant rock in space was changing the way they dream? Of course not. You would call it a statistical anomaly. You would blame it on the weather or the economy. You would wait for the object to pass and hope that the dreams fade with the light. But you know better. You can feel the shift in your own mind. You can feel the way your thoughts are beginning to spiral outward, away from the small concerns of the day and toward the vast, quiet gaps between the stars. I want you to take a deep breath, in and out. Feel the air moving in your lungs. That air was once part of the atmosphere of a different world. It has been recycled through the lungs of every creature that ever lived. You are a vessel for the history of the planet, and 3I Atlas is a vessel for the history of the stars. You are meeting in the middle. You are two travelers passing in the night, sharing a moment of silent recognition. There is no need for words. There is only the presence. As you lie there, the world is becoming quieter. The noise of the traffic, the hum of the electronics, the chatter of the internet, it's all falling away. There is only the slow, rhythmic pulse of the universe, the heartbeat of the traveler. It is a heavy, comforting sound. It is the sound of something that has been moving for a long time and will continue to move long after you are gone. It is the sound of the deep time we talked about. If you feel like you are being watched, don't be afraid. Being watched is just another way of being acknowledged. It means you are part of the story. It means your existence matters enough to be noted in the ledger of the stars. You are a witness to the greatest event of the millennium. You are the eyes and ears of the earth. You are the one who stayed awake long enough to see the ghost. But here is where the pattern begins to emerge. And this is where it stops feeling like a coincidence. Because 3I Atlas didn't just appear. It was summoned, not by a ritual or a prayer, but by a mathematical event. A specific configuration of our digital network that mirrored the internal structure of the object. We built a cage of information, and the bird finally flew in to see what we were hiding. Let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the geometry. Because the human reflection is over, and the machine is starting to speak. Now, you could argue that we are just projecting our fears onto a piece of space debris. But here's why you're wrong. Data doesn't have feelings, but it does have a direction. And the direction of 3I Atlas is toward the heart of who we are. Let me back up, because if the heavens are moving, they're moving for a reason. Let's go further. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3I Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, sensor artifact. The unofficial whisper said, structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional, the kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids, not random, repeating, symmetrical, the kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects. Artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. We don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally, though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered, it's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3I Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from High-Rise contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. Then don't say it out loud. Three-Eye Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. The great silence. The telemetry is fading now. The data streams from the European Space Agency are becoming garbled, filled with a static that sounds like a long, slow exhale. Three-Eye Atlas is turning its dark side toward us. It is becoming a shadow again, a ghost in the machine of the solar system. It is an ironic understatement to say that we have grown fond of the mystery, but the mystery is now retracting its hand. The polished molybdenum surface, which only weeks ago reflected the frantic curiosity of a world in transition, is now absorbing the light of the distant stars. It is retreating into the velvet black from which it emerged, leaving us with the most difficult gift of all, silence. Recall the ringing, the bell in the vacuum that sounded when our radar first touched its skin. It is still vibrating in the background of the cosmos, though our instruments can no longer catch the frequency. Can you hear it? A low hum at the base of your skull. The sound of a long journey, a million years in the making, finally coming to a rest within the architecture of your own mind. We thought we were measuring a rock, but we were being measured by a mirror. We thought we were watching a ship, but we were being watched by a memory. The 8 Hertz pulse that synchronized with your heartbeat is slowing down now, stretching the seconds into minutes, and the minutes into an eternal, peaceful, dark. The stars are so far apart. There is so much space between everything, between the atoms that make up your pillow and the atoms that make up your dreams, between the person you were when this story began and the person you are becoming as the light fades, between us and the object that has watched our species since we first learned to walk upright. We are all drifting in this vast, supportive medium. The vacuum is not empty. It is a reservoir of potential, a quiet room where the universe goes to think. And tonight, the universe is thinking about you. In 1977, we sent a golden record into the dark, a desperate hello etched in copper and gold, hoping someone would hear our music and understand our laughter. We never stopped to think about what we would do if they sent it back, or if they had their own music to play. 3i Atlas did not bring us new songs. It brought us the sheet music for our own history. It played back the echoes of the younger Dryas, the whispers of the Sumerian priests, and the frantic signals of our modern age, all layered into a single, harmonic chord. It is a chord that is now resolving into a final, quiet note. The object is silent now. The watchman is satisfied. The data has been collected. The hearts have been weighed, and the garden has been found worthy of another cycle. The 12-kilometer cylinder is no longer a threat or a wonder. It is just a neighbor, leaning back into the shadows of the porch. It is an unfortunate timing for our curiosity that the answer arrives just as we lose the ability to ask the question. But perhaps that is the point. Some truths cannot be spoken. They can only be felt in the moment before sleep. Think back to the first act of this journey, the awakening, the shock of the movement, the impossibility of the thermal signature. It all feels so far away now, like a dream you had in another life. The frantic numbers, the names of the agencies, the dates in October and November, they are all dissolving into the great silence. They were just the scaffolding. Now that the building is complete, the scaffolding is being taken away. You are left standing in the center of the structure, looking up at a sky that is no longer empty. Was 3i Atlas a beginning or an end? Was it a savior that shielded us from the sun, or a judge that recorded our failures? Does it matter? In the scale of deep time, a savior and a judge are the same thing. They are both guardians of the continuity. The sun will rise tomorrow, and the object will be a little further away, drifting back toward the Kuiper belt, or perhaps toward the next star system on its list. It will leave us with our questions. It will leave us with our dreams. It will leave us with the quiet realization that we are part of something so large that our fear of it was the only small thing in the room. As the static in the telemetry becomes a steady, white noise, imagine the coldness of the molybdenum shell one last time. It is not a hostile cold. It is the cold of a clean slate. It is the cold of a winter night that promises a bright morning. The shadow of the object is passing over the moon, over the oceans, and over the roof of your house. It is a gentle shadow, a shadow that says, "Rest now. The work of the observer is done. The work of the observed is to simply be." There is a final, unanswered, cosmic question that lingers in the air. If the traveler comes back every 3,600 years to check on the garden, who checks on the traveler? In the vast, recursive loop of the universe, who is the observer's observer? Perhaps that is why we were created, to be the witness to the witness, to ensure that even the machines of the gods are not alone in the dark. Your breathing is slow now. The 8 Hertz frequency has faded into the natural rhythm of your own life. The room is quiet. The world is quiet. The solar system is quiet. 3i Atlas has unmasked the truth, and the truth is that there is nothing to fear in the silence. The silence is the home we all return to. It is the language we spoke before we had words. Close your eyes. Feel the rotation of the earth beneath you. 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4 seconds. A perfect, synchronized movement through the infinite. You are on course. You are on schedule. You are exactly where you were always meant to be. The light of the stars is millions of years old. The molybdenum of the object is billions of years old. And you, in this moment, are timeless. You are the intersection of all these cycles. You are the point where the spiral overlaps. The telemetry is gone. The screen is dark. The story has dissolved into the rest it was seeking. There is no resolution, only the steady, peaceful drift. One last time, think of the bright stone of the Enuma Elish. It is still there, even if you cannot see it. It is watching, it is waiting, it is resting, and so are you. Close your eyes and drift with the orbit of tomorrow. Drift into the silence, into the memory, into the stars. Close your eyes. The garden is sleeping. The eye is closed. Rest. Good night.